Liverpool's docks have always held a mysterious allure. By day, they were bustling with cargo ships and tourists, but by night, the streets transformed into something entirely different. Neon lights reflected off the wet cobblestones, casting long, distorted shadows. Music from nearby clubs thumped faintly through the fog, mixing with the distant hum of lorries and the occasional shout of someone too far gone in their own world. In 2025, the nightlife of Liverpool had grown more than just vibrant. It had become a playground for those who thrived in the shadows. Beneath the laughter, dancing and clinking of glasses, a hidden world of danger and crime moved quietly, almost invisibly, among the crowds. It started with subtle changes. Warehouse doors that had been locked for years were now ajar at night, lights spilling into the alleys. Figures slipped in and out, careful not to be seen by anyone who might draw attention. No one knew what was happening inside these buildings. The locals whispered of secret meetings, illegal trades, and people who disappeared for hours without explanation. It was the kind of place where the ordinary became extraordinary, where ordinary nightlife had a dark twin lurking just around the corner. A single CCTV camera at the edge of the docks captured something unusual one night. The footage was grainy, barely more than shadows moving across the frame, but the movements were deliberate. A tall figure with a hood lingered in front of a warehouse, scanning the street as if waiting for someone. Then, for a brief moment, the figure disappeared behind the door, only to emerge minutes later carrying a small, unmarked package. The person walked swiftly through the fog, melting into the darkness of the empty streets. At first, no one paid attention to the footage. It seemed like a normal delivery. But as more events unfolded, investigators would look back at this short clip as the first clue in a string of crimes that would grip the city. Tourists and partygoers who frequented the docks at night had no idea what was happening behind the scenes. To them, Liverpool was all music, laughter, and bright lights. They danced and took photos, unaware of the subtle tension creeping through the alleys and side streets. Local vendors noticed it too, strangers asking strange questions, quick exchanges of small envelopes, shadows moving where there shouldn't be any, but most brushed it off. After all, the docks had always had an edge, and no one wanted to believe that the excitement they enjoyed could be hiding something sinister. By the end of the night, the docks were quiet again. The music faded, the neon lights dimmed, and only the fog remained, curling around the empty warehouses. In that silence, the hidden world of Liverpool nightlife seemed to breathe on its own, waiting for the next evening to bring it back to life. Beneath the bright party lights and the laughter, the city held its secrets tightly, promising that the story of 2025's nightlife was only just beginning. By midnight, Liverpool's streets had transformed into a living, breathing entity. The music from dozens of clubs collided in the air, a constant pulse that seemed to synchronize with the heartbeat of the city. Streetlights flickered over wet cobblestones, reflecting colors from neon signs and flashing advertisements, creating a surreal glow. People flowed like rivers, weaving through alleys, dancing on sidewalks, and laughing as though the night would never end. But amid the apparent chaos, one club remained different, unassuming on the outside, yet infamous among those who knew the city's darker side. The entrance was tucked away down a narrow alley, marked only by a small, flickering sign. Only the chosen few ever found it, and those who did were often unaware of the invisible rules governing what went on inside. Inside, the club seemed like any other at first glance. Lights pulsed with the rhythm of the music, smoke machines blurred faces, and bartenders moved quickly between customers, pouring drinks into hands that never paused to notice the surroundings. But beneath the laughter and dancing, a careful game of observation and manipulation played out. Wealthy visitors and young locals alike became unwitting participants in a network of extortion and blackmail. Hidden cameras captured every gesture, every expression. Phones went missing, wallets were subtly switched, and documents disappeared without anyone realizing. The club was a stage, and everyone inside played a part, whether they wanted to or not. It wasn't immediately visible to outsiders. To the casual observer, it was just another night of fun, friends meeting up, strangers dancing, DJs spinning tracks that kept the energy high. Yet for those who understood the signals, the club was a trap. Certain tables were carefully monitored. Certain drinks were watched. People who tried to linger too long near corners where deals happened often vanished for a few hours, returning with uneasy smiles and stories that made no sense. The thrill of the party masked something far more calculated, something that preyed on the thrill-seeker's blind confidence. Rumors began to circulate quickly. People whispered about secret recordings, about hidden rooms and back corridors where private deals were made. A network of enforcers operated in silence, ensuring no one stepped out of line. Even regular visitors were now wary, sensing the subtle tension in the air. Drinks were served with smiles that didn't reach the eyes. Laughter could mask threats. A misplaced glance could mark someone for attention they didn't want. The atmosphere was electric, but underneath, danger moved like a slow, deliberate tide, impossible to ignore once it was noticed. By the early hours, as the crowd thinned and the music softened, the true nature of the club's activities became clearer. Envelopes, phones, and packages changed hands under the cover of darkness. Security cameras captured movements that seemed ordinary but were part of a larger, more sinister plan. When the club finally emptied, leaving only staff and a few lingering figures, it was clear that the night's entertainment had been just one layer of a far more complex game. What seemed like harmless fun had been a carefully constructed environment designed to manipulate, exploit, and control. Liverpool's nightlife had always been alive, but in 2025, it had evolved into something far more dangerous, hidden behind flashing lights and pounding music, waiting for the right moment to strike. In the weeks following that first month of mysterious events, Liverpool's nightlife seemed to carry a heavier shadow. The city pulsed with music and laughter, but beneath the surface, something far darker was unfolding. People who had once moved freely between clubs and streets began to vanish without warning. Young locals, often seen smiling and joking on social media, disappeared in the dead of night. Their friends reported them missing, but every investigation seemed to hit a wall. There were no signs of forced entry, no messages left behind, and no witnesses who could explain what had happened. It was as if the city itself had swallowed them whole, leaving nothing but whispered rumors in its place. Authorities began to notice a chilling pattern. Every disappearance could be traced back to a specific street, alley, or nightclub. The missing had all attended the same events, often passing through narrow, dimly lit corridors, or interacting with people who seemed harmless at first. Some were last seen leaving clubs with strangers, others were recorded on security cameras, stepping into alleyways where no one returned. Investigators found abandoned phones on the sidewalks, wallets left untouched, and personal items scattered as if their owners had vanished mid-step. Graffiti and strange cryptic symbols appeared on walls near each disappearance, a silent signature of the unseen hand orchestrating the events. Locals began to whisper of a force moving through Liverpool at night, something that thrived on the chaos of nightlife. Partygoers spoke quietly about the tension they felt in certain areas, the odd feeling of being watched even when the streets appeared empty. Taxi drivers who had long been witnesses to late-night behavior reported unusual requests. Riders dropped off in isolated areas, sometimes refusing to explain why they needed to be there. Even the busiest streets, once lively and inviting, now carried a subtle sense of danger that made some hesitate before venturing out. The disappearances didn't follow logic or pattern visible to the untrained eye. People vanished in the middle of crowds, in quiet corners, and even on well-lit streets. Each incident left a ripple of fear. Clubs started seeing fewer regulars. Whispers spread about secret meetings, hidden rooms, and people being taken. Social media amplified the tension as friends and family posted desperate messages, wondering if their loved ones had simply left the city or if something far more sinister had occurred. The unknown had a name now, though it remained unseen. The nights that swallowed people. Investigators combed through every clue. Abandoned phones were analyzed, revealing encrypted messages and deleted videos. Surveillance footage, grainy and incomplete, hinted at figures moving quickly through the foggy streets, but no faces could be identified. Even the cryptic graffiti began to make a strange sense, a coded map of activity, marking areas where people had been last seen. The city's night rhythm, once predictable and festive, became a dangerous puzzle. Every alley, club, and warehouse held a potential clue or a trap, and every shadow seemed to hold a hidden story. Liverpool's nightlife, once a celebration of music, fashion, and culture, had become a dangerous labyrinth. Each disappearance left questions unanswered, and a sense of dread lingering over the streets. The city's energy continued to pulse, but now it carried a haunting reminder. Under the bright lights and thumping bass, darkness moved with purpose, leaving nothing but fear and mystery in its wake. The nights that swallowed people were only just beginning, and no one knew who might be next. Beneath Liverpool's bustling streets, another world thrived, one that few ever noticed. The docks and alleys above had grown lively with music, lights, and laughter, but beneath them a secret network of tunnels and passageways connected the city's nightlife in ways that were invisible to ordinary visitors. It was a hidden highway, used not for transportation in the usual sense, but for moving goods, people, and information without drawing attention. The network stretched from the waterfront warehouses to backstreet clubs, linking locations that seemed unrelated on the surface. Those who knew its paths could move freely, while the rest of the city remained unaware of the invisible veins pulsing beneath their feet. The smugglers' network was a carefully orchestrated operation. Vans with tinted windows moved silently through the night, avoiding main roads, and using alleys that had long been ignored by law enforcement. Inside, the cargo was as varied as it was illicit: stolen electronics, counterfeit merchandise, unregistered weapons, and substances that were highly illegal. Each delivery was timed precisely, coordinated with events above ground, so that the noise and chaos of Liverpool's nightlife masked the movements below. Observers on the streets above might see nothing more than a group of friends laughing, unaware that a van had just passed a hidden alley carrying more than anyone realized. Inside the warehouses, the activity was even more organized. Rooms that appeared abandoned during the day were transformed at night into processing hubs. Packages were sorted and labeled with codes that only insiders could understand. People moved silently, communicating with gestures and nods, leaving no trace of the transactions in case authorities investigated. The smugglers' efficiency was matched only by their caution. Cameras monitored entrances and exits, while lookout points ensured that no unexpected visitors disrupted the operations. Every step was calculated, every movement deliberate, and mistakes were punished quietly but severely. Despite their careful planning, cracks began to appear in the network. One surveillance camera had captured a blurred image of a stranger lingering near a key warehouse, someone who did not belong to the usual rhythm of activity. Though seemingly insignificant at the time, this brief appearance would later help investigators trace one of the key links in the network. Meanwhile, the streets above remained oblivious. Partygoers continued to enjoy the neon-lit alleys and clubs, unaware that the energy and excitement around them were being used as a cover for something far more sinister. Music, laughter, and dancing served as camouflage, keeping both the public and the authorities distracted. The network was not just about moving goods, it was about power. Whoever controlled the underground passages controlled access to the most lucrative parts of Liverpool's nightlife. Rival gangs began staking claims, carefully negotiating or subtly intimidating each other to maintain control. A single misstep could lead to a violent confrontation, yet most incidents were never reported publicly, maintaining the illusion of normalcy above. Even local law enforcement, despite knowing the general locations of these networks, struggled to penetrate the organized secrecy. By the time the night ended and the city's clubs began to empty, the underground network had already prepared for the next cycle. Vans returned to hidden garages, warehouses were locked and darkened, and the paths connecting the city below became quiet once more. Above ground, Liverpool's nightlife continued to sparkle with excitement, but beneath the glittering streets, a carefully orchestrated system of crime and control waited patiently, invisible to everyone who danced above it. The underground world moved with precision, a hidden pulse dictating the flow of power, danger, and opportunity in a city that believed its nights belonged solely to music and celebration. As Liverpool's nightlife continued to pulse with energy, a new layer of danger emerged. Masked parties became more than just a trend. They were a tool for manipulation and control. Crowds gathered under elaborate lights, glittering costumes hiding identities, while those orchestrating events observed quietly from the shadows. The anonymity provided by masks gave criminals the perfect cover. Guests assumed they were simply enjoying a themed night of fun, but in reality, the parties were carefully designed arenas where power, influence, and greed were tested. Those who attended unknowingly became part of a calculated system, their every move scrutinized by eyes they could not see. Inside these venues, the deception was subtle but precise. Hidden cameras and microphones recorded every gesture, every whispered word, and every fleeting glance. People who thought they were safe were suddenly vulnerable, their secrets exposed to those who sought leverage. An envelope left casually on a table, a phone accidentally swapped, or a drink left unattended could all be part of a scheme to manipulate, intimidate, or coerce. Visitors left the parties smiling, unaware that the night's laughter had been carefully choreographed to distract them from the dangers lurking around them. What appeared to be simple fun was actually a high-stakes game, where each mask concealed someone with intentions far from innocent. Betrayal became a quiet, omnipresent force in this hidden world. Friends who had shared drinks and danced together for years could suddenly find themselves under suspicion. People vanished from one party and reappeared later, their demeanor changed, their loyalty questioned. Rivalries simmered beneath the surface, often unnoticed by those not attuned to the subtle signals of conflict. Even trusted associates were not immune. Secrets were traded, alliances shifted overnight, and anyone who underestimated the cunning of the city's criminal elements risked becoming a pawn, or worse. The power dynamics were invisible to outsiders but felt in every nervous glance and hurried step down a foggy street. The masked events also served another purpose: intelligence gathering. Each party provided a chance to observe potential threats or opportunities. Criminal leaders recorded interactions, noting who appeared vulnerable, who carried valuable information, and who could be persuaded or coerced into compliance. The parties created a complex web of surveillance disguised as entertainment. Above ground, the clubs and streets thrived with color, laughter, and music. Below, however, the collected information was analyzed and used to strengthen control over the underground networks, ensuring that power remained concentrated in the hands of those who knew how to exploit every secret. Fear and excitement intertwined seamlessly. Visitors often left with a sense of exhilaration, not realizing that their every action had been watched and catalogued. A casual conversation, a fleeting glance, or a misplaced gesture could determine their fate in this hidden world. And yet, the allure of the parties continued to draw crowds, despite whispers of danger and rumors of disappearances. The thrill of anonymity, combined with the allure of glamour and music, made it difficult for anyone to resist. By the end of the night, when the masks were removed and the crowd dispersed, the true nature of the events remained hidden. Only the organizers and those deeply involved in the underground networks understood what had occurred. Above ground, Liverpool's nightlife maintained its dazzling appearance, alive with color, rhythm, and celebration. Below, the city's dark game of manipulation, betrayal, and observation continued unabated, leaving those who ventured too close unaware that the fun they sought was inseparable from the peril that lurked behind every mask. It began as a simple recording, a blurry clip captured by an unsuspecting tourist walking down a quiet alley near Liverpool's waterfront. The video was grainy, the image flickering as the phone wavered in the person's hand. At first, it seemed unremarkable, a few distant figures moving through the fog, the faint hum of music from a nearby club, and the occasional flicker of neon signs reflecting off wet streets. But when investigators reviewed it days later, they noticed details that had gone unnoticed. A shadow that lingered too long, a spray-painted symbol on a brick wall, and the muffled sounds of an argument in the distance. What had seemed like a normal clip of nightlife became a crucial piece of a much larger puzzle. The viral clip spread quickly. Social media users shared it widely, unaware of its hidden significance. People debated whether it was simply an artistic shot, or evidence of something more sinister. Meanwhile, authorities began to trace the faint clues embedded in the footage. The shadow, barely noticeable in the darkness, matched descriptions of a key figure involved in the city's underground network. The cryptic symbol was identified as part of a code used to mark locations where illegal activity occurred. The argument captured on audio, though distorted, contained subtle references that hinted at threats and deals that few had dared speak about openly. This recording marked a turning point in the investigation. For months, authorities had struggled to connect disappearances, illegal trades, and secret gatherings. The city's nightlife had always been vibrant, chaotic, and difficult to monitor. But this single video offered a glimpse behind the curtain. Detectives mapped the locations captured in the clip, cross-referencing them with missing persons reports, surveillance footage, and informant tips. Slowly, a clearer picture began to emerge. A network of individuals operating under the cover of night, manipulating events above ground while remaining almost invisible to the public eye. The video also revealed the psychology of the underground. Observers had learned to exploit fear and uncertainty, using subtle gestures, symbols, and controlled visibility to maintain power. The people in the clip moved with precision, yet left traces that only a trained eye could detect. It was a demonstration of control, a reminder that even in crowded streets filled with music, laughter, and the illusion of safety, danger could move silently. The tourist, completely unaware, had captured a moment that no insider had planned to reveal, creating a link between the visible world of nightlife and the hidden operations beneath it. As the clip circulated, Liverpool's residents began to notice a change in atmosphere. Whispers of secret operations, hidden cameras, and unexplained disappearances grew louder. Tourists still enjoyed the city's vibrant energy, but locals walked the streets with caution, aware that every alley might conceal more than it appeared. Investigators, armed with the new evidence, planned their next steps carefully. Each frame of the recording was analyzed, every shadow tracked, and every symbol decoded. The city had revealed one of its secrets, but only partially. The viral clip was a key, a starting point, a crack in the carefully constructed facade that allowed law enforcement to see what had remained invisible for too long. By the time night fell again over Liverpool, the streets hummed with music, laughter, and neon lights. But beneath the surface, the hidden world of manipulation and crime continued its silent operations. The tourist's video had pierced the veil, revealing that the city's nightlife was far more complex and dangerous than anyone had realized. What had seemed like a fleeting moment of ordinary life had turned into the first step toward exposing a network that thrived under the cover of darkness, leaving everyone who watched with a chilling question: who was being watched tonight, and who would be next? As the city of Liverpool slept under a thick blanket of fog and distant neon lights, law enforcement prepared for what they hoped would be a decisive operation. The night was quiet, too quiet, broken only by the occasional hum of a car engine or the echo of footsteps on wet cobblestones. Police had tracked activity to a notorious warehouse hidden behind rows of shuttered shops and industrial buildings. It was said to host some of the most secretive underground events in the city, a place where deals were struck, alliances were tested, and threats were quietly enforced. Officers moved carefully, cameras and microphones in place, hoping to catch the criminals in the act, but aware that the slightest misstep could alert the suspects and ruin months of investigation. Inside the warehouse, shadows moved like living creatures. Figures carried packages with practiced ease, glanced at one another for confirmation, and disappeared down corridors that twisted like a labyrinth. The operators of the underground knew the city's rhythm intimately. They had planned for surveillance, hidden cameras, and even unexpected intrusions. The law enforcement team, though experienced, was entering a carefully constructed trap. Every doorway, every darkened corner, had been considered by the criminals, who seemed to anticipate the authorities' every move. The air was thick with tension, a quiet pressure that made even the seasoned officers pause and measure each step. Outside, the streets of Liverpool were alive with the usual nighttime energy. Music thumped from nearby clubs, people laughed on sidewalks, and taxis navigated the narrow alleys. The contrast was stark. The surface of the city was a glittering party, while below, a high-stakes game of cat and mouse unfolded. Investigators had learned that timing was critical. Any premature action could scatter the suspects and erase months of evidence. The team communicated silently, eyes scanning shadows, ears listening for the slightest sound that might reveal movement inside the warehouse. Then, as the first moments of confrontation seemed imminent, the unexpected occurred. A figure from within the criminal network betrayed the others, providing a subtle signal that disrupted the careful balance of the night. Doors opened and closed hastily. Figures moved in directions not anticipated, and the operation shifted from controlled surveillance to chaotic pursuit. Some of the criminals tried to escape through hidden passages, vanishing into the darkness as though the warehouse had swallowed them whole. The betrayal sent shockwaves through both sides. Law enforcement adjusted, but the criminals' knowledge of the building gave them a dangerous advantage. By dawn, the streets above returned to their usual rhythm, the music and lights masking the night's events. Some suspects had been apprehended, others had vanished, leaving only traces of their presence, abandoned packages, scattered papers, and surveillance footage that hinted at unseen movements. The betrayal had altered the course of the investigation, leaving authorities frustrated but determined. The operation had revealed fragments of the hidden network, but it also proved that Liverpool's nightlife harbored secrets far more complex than anyone had imagined. As the sun rose, the city seemed calm once more. Yet beneath the surface, the underground world continued to breathe. The streets above were alive with laughter and energy, but shadows lingered in alleys, warehouses, and hidden corners, waiting for the next night to resume their silent operations. The confrontation had changed the game, but it had also reminded everyone involved that in Liverpool's nightlife control was temporary, loyalty was fragile, and the city itself could swallow even the most cunning players in the blink of an eye. As the first light of dawn crept over Liverpool, the city awoke to the familiar rhythm of daily life. Cafes opened, buses rumbled through the streets, and the docks began to hum with early activity. From above, everything seemed normal, vibrant, alive, and inviting. Yet beneath this everyday surface, the events of the night lingered like a shadow refusing to fade. The warehouse that had been the scene of the previous night's confrontation stood quiet and empty, its secrets temporarily hidden behind locked doors and dimmed lights. The city had survived another night, but the invisible threads of crime, power, and deception were far from gone. The arrests made during the stakeout provided only a partial victory. Several key figures were taken into custody, their faces captured in mugshots that would later circulate online and in local newspapers. Some carried charges that could finally bring them before the law, but many others vanished without a trace. Investigators realized that the criminal network was resilient, capable of regrouping and striking again under the cover of night. Each arrest felt like a temporary win, a small crack in a larger, almost impervious system. It became clear that the hidden world of Liverpool's nightlife was not easily dismantled. The people of the city, meanwhile, were left with questions that had no clear answers. Tourists continued to visit the clubs, drawn by neon lights, music, and the promise of unforgettable nights. Locals returned to their routines, walking streets that had witnessed disappearances, betrayals, and secret deals. Yet a sense of unease lingered. The docks, the warehouses, and even the brightly lit streets held reminders that beneath every moment of celebration, there was a darker undercurrent moving silently. The city itself seemed to carry a dual identity, one of joy and color, the other of manipulation and danger. Rumors circulated in hushed tones. Stories of masked parties, hidden passageways, and the mysterious symbols painted on walls spread through social media and local conversations. People speculated about who had been involved, who had escaped, and who might be next. Some avoided the nightlife entirely, while others were drawn to it with an irresistible curiosity, eager to glimpse the hidden world behind the glittering facade. Each night carried both the thrill of excitement and the subtle, lingering fear of the unknown. Investigators continued their work, analyzing evidence from abandoned phones, footage captured by unsuspecting witnesses, and reports from informants. Every lead added another layer to the picture, yet the full scope of the criminal network remained elusive. The city had revealed fragments of its secrets, but many pieces were still hidden, waiting for the next night to expose them. The underworld of Liverpool's nightlife was patient, observant, and always adapting, thriving in the spaces where light and shadow met. As the sun climbed higher, Liverpool returned to its ordinary rhythm. Music, laughter, and commerce filled the streets, giving the appearance that life had moved on. But for those who knew the truth, the memory of the nights that had swallowed people, the secret deals in hidden alleys, and the betrayals within masked parties lingered like a warning. The city's energy was intoxicating, but it had a darker side, one that only revealed itself to those who looked closely enough. Liverpool's nightlife in 2025 was alive, thrilling, and beautiful. But it was also a world of secrets, danger, and unseen power, and it would not easily be forgotten.